Hey, welcome to the policy show, the mock candidate policy show. Today's mock candidate is actually for Illinois State Representative District 78. The mock candidate policy show is part of Mega School. Mega School is high school, except it's for adults. So whenever we find ourselves saying, man, I wish I learned that in school. Mega School is the opportunity to learn it right now as adults. And with me today for the show, I have Roman Morrow, uh, Drive at 5 host on intellectualradio.com. Roman, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Roman Morrow. I'm the host of the Drive at 5 on Mondays at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, Eastern 6 p.m. Pacific. You got to go to the 3 p.m. slot. So I'm there, and we talk about a variety of issues that's concerning, lifestyle in the Black community. So yeah, please tune in, and that's mainly it.
Cool. Well, today is a bit special. I asked a favor of Roman. Last time we were able to meet, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we talked about our mock candidate for Illinois governor. I wanted to get a little bit more local. So I asked Roman here to kind of help guide us around a little bit more local in Illinois to District 78. So the mock candidate for Illinois State Representative District 78. Just wanted to get a little bit more local and work with somebody who's able to make it today, as well as could speak to kind of their neck of the woods. So a little bit more closer to the local needs of the community as opposed to statewide with governors. So I appreciate, Roman, you helping me out with that to give that little more local perspective. We have some things to talk about. Illinois Cook County depopulation. I think we can just kind of dive right in here and just have some other things to bring up as well. But just want to go through here. Looks like we have Renitris Pierre, who's ready to join us. Going to patch her in. Hey, Renitris.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hello.
Hotep salutations.
Awesome.
Sorry, I had to.
All
It's
good.
a life. It's a
You're
life.
Here. You're here. We're ready to just have a natural, organic conversation here amongst folks concerned about the community. We're going to focus on Roman's doing me a favor to kind of help us get a little bit more local than last time. And I said, hey, Roman, you know, joined us last time just in your neck of the woods. That's District 78 for Illinois State District 78. Tell us about your neck of the woods to show people what it looks like to kind of get a little bit closer to local politics. So Roman's going to kind of help us guide us through that. And actually, Roman, you mentioned the Cook County depopulation, population is dropping. I'll let you just kind of kick off the conversation. We're just going to talk this through and see if we can figure out some policy for our mock candidate here. Roman.
Thank you. Well, let me put it to you in perspective. The issue concerning the 78 district is economics, of course, taxes, and public safety is the biggest issue. So businesses, small businesses, is not really receiving their fair share. And also, taxes is all over the place. And when you look at it, you try to think of what can you do to help the masses in a district. So when you look at the taxes, the economic, because you see economic development, right? That goes around your community and everybody else's community. However, when you really thoroughly look at it, it's only a certain amount of populations that's benefiting for the economic development or regentrification of a community. So we have to change that. So in the 78 district, you're looking at the taxes that's extremely high. You're looking at um, economic development and the issue of everybody is not having an input in the economic development, what belongs in the community, what should not belong in the community, and what makes sense to the residents that lives in that area. The other is public safety. Public safety is a major concern throughout, I would say, the great state of Illinois. If you look at what happened yesterday downtown, gives you a snapshot of public safety concerns. Where you have close to 600 to 700 teens in the downtown area that converge into one area, the cops can't do anything because they're outnumbered. And when you have media reporting, you don't want to be insensitive to the people. So the question remains, where are the parents when it comes to these situations? Where is the parenting? So if, let's say, if I put my legislative hat on, the people say, well, it's regentrification and kids are all over the place. I've seen regentrification in certain areas, and a lot of people blame it, well, it's a whole bunch of blacks. It's a whole bunch of black teens and stuff in that situation. Well, I look at Broadview, which is predominantly black, which has economic development, that you can go around and be safe when people are benefiting. That right there is a snapshot of what it could be when you have good legislators at the helm. Now, when you look at the whole entire picture, again, it's the number one thing that people are fearing is public safety, their taxes, and they want to see relief. And that's why they say, if they're not getting anywhere, guess what? I'm gone. So they're leaving the entire state of Illinois as a whole. They don't want to go to a suburb. They're just tired of Illinois and its, I would say, politics, hands in the cookie jar situation. So I sit there and I look at it and I analyze it over and over again. And when you look at the 78 district, it's almost like a night and day in certain areas. In the Austin community where I'm at, it to give you a perfect perspective, if anyone out there watch cartoons, don't you ever see like the dark side where it's clouds and thunder and lightning and everything is dark, and then when you cross the street there's sunshine, robins and birds and all of that? Well, if you go to the let's say you're traveling west, okay, let's say from Cicero to Austin, okay, you're in the dark side, pigeons, all that stuff. When you cross over to Austin to Oak Park, you start seeing robins, you start seeing sunshine, you start seeing businesses, people laughing and stuff like that. And it makes you wonder, it's a simple street crossing that makes a difference. A simple street crossing to another area that increases your taxes. A simple street crossing that gives you some type of relief. So why can't it just integrate together that you don't notice the difference? And I think, and me personally, I think it's set and designed like that. And I think people should chime in and have more discussions on it, because right now, when you look at what's been going on in the community, especially yesterday, it's a damn shame that 700 teens converged downtown, and the striking thing about it, the police knew about it through social media, and they decided not to do anything, converge, or say, hey, you see a whole bunch of teens, hey, where you guys going? Not today, go back home. It public safety is an issue, and it's a major issue throughout the state, and it's no different from where you are, where I'm at. And those are the dynamics: economic development, public safety, taxes, and an opportunity. And that's the fourth one. So it's the same thing all around versus one district.
Okay, so the problems in Cook County is being felt far and wide within the state, and there's just a backlog of things that just need to be common sense things that need to be done, economic development, issue, addressing safety, listening to the community, just some basic foundational things. I like to get into a little more specifics. Baxter here is joining us. Baxter, just a quick word on who you are, as we're just having a conversation about to really get into the nitty gritty of policy, focused on the 78th district here. Baxter, you can come off mute and.
Sure. Hey, Jerome, and it's good to see my brother Roman.
How you doing, sir?
How are you, buddy? It's good to see you again, man. We both do work in the Austin community, and Roman's just been terrific, highlighting a lot of these issues in a way that people can understand them and access them. So I really appreciate the work that he's been doing at Intellectual Radio. I'm a government relations, public policy guy. Been doing it for 20 years or so. Recently, I've recognized the need for hyper local public policy agendas because of some of the points that Roman was just sort of pointed out, that many communities throughout the city of Chicago, and we're not just talking about Chicago, we're talking about Cook County, I understand that. But Chicago is a very, very segregated city, and we don't just mean by race. You know, some of these communities are extremely well defined, and they have long-term historic significance, and people identify with having lived there and gone to school there. You know, their parents own homes. They are literally, invested in these communities. So they matter. It's not just a political boundary. It actually has socio-cultural meaning. And so you have to deal with that. What I appreciate LISC, and Roman, I forget what LISC stands for, Local Institute for something. LISC is responsible for the quality of life plan that was developed in 2018 in the Austin community, and they have led other comprehensive community plans throughout the state of Illinois. And so what they've decided to do is sort of amalgamate all of those plans into a citywide agenda. And I think that the communities who don't go through the process of thinking critically about the local, unique, really sort of special challenges that they face, then they're going to be left behind when it comes to sort of the more macro public policy making exercises that I suspect are going to be ramping up as we have a new mayor and not just a new city council right now, but the council has been remaking itself for the last 12 to 15 years, if anybody's been paying attention. You have socialists and, LGBTQ members in the council. We didn't have that before. So the council is changing significantly. It's more progressive. It's younger. This is a time for people to think strategically and critically about their local public policy agenda and to make sure that they have a place at the table. I don't know how you can contribute to the larger public policy conversation if you haven't thought substantively in a meaningful, community engaged way about the challenges that you're facing and about some of the solutions that the people in your community and business owners, faith leaders, all that sort of thing, stakeholders, some of the solutions that they have been proposing, because this really needs to be community, not just community informed, but community generated. And so that's where I'm coming from. And I do think that what I'm saying to you now, I didn't just start here. I heard the conversation before you introduced me, Jerome. I do believe that a lack of engagement, investment, and ownership in terms of planning the future has a lot to do with people just packing up and leaving. Just saying, I'm no longer invested. This city no longer reflects my values, and I just don't see I don't see a real approach to addressing the issues that I experience. With technology and with all of the access to information and data, I think that we can integrate hyper local, even census tract level policy solution proposals into the wider Cook County public policy making scheme. And I'm sort of pushing this. This is my thing right now.
Yeah, that's where we are. That's really the theme of today is, and I actually want to get in the nitty gritty now. And Roman, if you can get ready to cue us up with something very specific to District 78. It's a stepping stone towards being hyper local. I agree with you, Baxter. Last week we talked about the governor, so looking at Illinois wide. So now we're just getting a little bit closer to District 78 as a stepping stone towards being hyper local. We want to address all levels of government with third party. And again, we want mainstream policies. We want to extract and discover those mainstream policies. We're not looking for agreement here. We're looking to discover what is mainstream. That means what's in our heart of hearts, behind closed doors, off the record. What do people really believe? And we're looking for that 80% threshold of agreement of what people truly believe on the inside. We want to discover that. And that doesn't mean it's necessarily the best or even right. It just is mainstream to make sure that 90% where we are in agreement, we want to make sure that's getting through. So Roman, kick us off here. Let's look at some specific policies that are especially relevant to District 78 in your view, since that's where you live. And we want to try to discover and extract mainstream policies. So kick us off, Roman. What are we working with? Some policy.
Okay, let's I want to piggyback off of Baxter here, and Baxter and I have been knowing each other for a minute here. So it's great to see you, my man. And I just want to say this that affects not only the 78, but all over, but especially in areas of the 78. And that is the crime problem. Now, when the crime problem happens, and I think Baxter spoke upon this, is to integrate information to the community. Here's the problem. Some people have that information. Some people refuse to share that information. And when you look at what happened, and I'm going to give you a scenario because I'm going to refer back to this, what happened yesterday downtown, when you have 600 to 700 teens converging in one area, and the police had this information on social media, didn't alert officers on the street downtown that they're coming down there. That is the biggest issue because you can have the information, you can integrate technology, and that's what public safety is all about, and that's what the new communication style. But if you don't use it effectively to inform people that may not be in front of a laptop, that may not be in front of their cell phone right now, and they're working, how can you disseminate that information to a police officer and they know doggone well that something is about to happen and you're not preparing for it? In the 78th district, parts of the 78th district, they have this new technology where you hear gunshots. I don't know if you heard it on the news or something like that. It's a technology that former Mayor Lightfoot invested in, where whenever they hear gunshot, the police are supposed to automatically be dispatched to see what's going on, right? Unfortunately, it's not working. Because if it was working effectively, the police is Johnny on the spot. And if you talk to people on the ground, the major issue is when they call police, it takes them 30 to 40 minutes to respond to one single 911 call. Why is that? Then you look at, well, we're busy. Does it necessarily take the whole precinct, the whole district to go to one murder scene or one crime scene? Those are the issues. And the issues get worse and worse. The problem is, it's not the technology. In integrating technology to real life situation. The problem is disseminating that information to people on the ground effectively and transferring it and making it happen and making it useful. Other than that, technology is just sitting there on your lap. It's just like, I give you this platform right here. We can talk until we're blue in the face. We're out here, right? But it takes someone to pass this information on to somebody else, to somebody else, to somebody else, in order to get the message out there. Because if you don't, go ahead.
Okay. I have a thought on that as a potential policy proposal to run by, since that's very specific. Renitris, you had a word to say. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'll let you go first about because mine is a little more extemporaneous. Go ahead.
You can, through blockchain technology, you could have a record of what information was sent where, and a record is basically, you can have an immutable record of what messages are being sent within the police, from what chain of command to whom, for basically an audit, and with digital signatures to say it was sent at this time, it was received at another time. That would apply even to, if we use example with what happened downtown. If social media, you could have a tip line, if you will, modernized through an app, but a tip line to say on social media, hey, police, this is going down. If no one else told you, it was this member of the community. And it will be a matter of immutable public record that it was sent, and even the time that it was received, meaning it was read. And when it comes to that same technology of basically having a detailed, immutable audit of communication, when the gunshot goes off and is detected, you can also just basically track and audit the chain, whatever the chain of command is, that who is receiving what message and when, so that we can have a more, because that's to your point, Roman, we don't have a detailed audit of the communication breakdown, and the technology already exists to provide an immutable record of what communication was sent where, and it could be publicly audited. All through technology, we could leverage the excellent university system in Chicago, University of Chicago, UIC, all of them, to be able to make it a part of their senior thesis project. That's what I did when I went to college to study computer science, so that we don't have to necessarily even have it an additional cost to build and maintain this. It's just the senior thesis project for revolving for each graduating class in those schools, to be able to build on that. So basically, it's just a immutable audit of the communication of both of those, either social media tip off, or even the gunshot detector. So I just want to put that out there as a potential policy proposal to address the two specific issues that Roman mentioned. Renitras, you were saying?
Um, yeah, so uh it's a very difficult thing to speak on and come up with solutions to, because in a way, humanity in just in the world in general has come so far in regard to being less human in a way, and more I'm not sure what to call it, something else, something with less empathy, sympathy, and foresight about consequences, cause and effect. So I said all that to say, as far as what happened with the teens, downtown, and the police, unfortunately, I'm going to go the other way and say that policing actually is not, it's not a solution. It's not a solution because we're dealing with a mindset issue. These teens have been conditioned. Their conditioning has been conditioned. They're materialistic. They're short-sighted. They have no attention spans, et cetera, et cetera. And they also don't have constructive and productive things to do. If you look at teenagers, probably from early 1900s, 1700s, let's go into the early 19th century, there were more agrarian lives, or things that were more technical, even as far as trades, as far as what a person would be doing and by what time. A lot of teenagers would have been working full time or studying full time in the early 19th century versus not having something to do and being given a device that gives them ideas that aren't sound for anyone of any age to pursue. The police with technology. Well, first, let me also add, outside of mega school and what I've been told by Jerome and understand that he's doing, most technology is not an improvement. And we've mistaken advancement with improvement. So, what's going to happen is, as this technology advances, we're just going to be better monetized, not monetized, well, yeah, monetized and monitored, versus having societies that function in a way that's conclusive to safety, wellness, and security that we're talking about. The police are going to abuse um, technology that they're given. As far as why they didn't respond, I don't have a clue. I really don't. But I will say this, it all again goes back to mindset, because there's two mindsets in instance of what happened yesterday. You have a mindset of people with nothing to do. An idle mind is the devil's workshop, and they're being destructive. And then you have a mindset of police that, when it's appropriate or when they feel the need, using their discretion to be destructive as well, they're going to do so in very murderous and dangerous ways. So perhaps that's why they didn't respond, because they also maybe, being strategic, they know it would get out of hand and turn into a gunfight or something in the middle of downtown, and God only knows. We don't want the Magnificent Mile being associated to that, do we? Because ultimately, that's a capitalistic decision that was made. The police are nothing more than the knights of yesterday that respond to the request of the landlords. So we don't know what those communications were like for the powerful downtown, if they said, nah, just let them be, or what. Now, going back to, your districts, I respectfully submit that being that I am in a similar situation. I live in Waukegan. Okay, Waukegan certainly isn't Austin. I understand that. It certainly isn't Maywood. I took a look at the map and I'm familiar with the area, and I'm also a little bit familiar with Oak Park and everything. But being as though there are non-white black people in these areas, and in a lot of ways they don't have, again, constructive lives. They don't have resources and so forth and so on. What I've come to determine just by knowing a good little bit of history, understanding anthropology, and also understanding um, economics. Conclusively, we're in a system of racism, white supremacy. I don't know if y'all are going to agree with this or not. Give me one second. Yeah, I don't know if you all are going to agree with this or not, but we're in a system of racism, white supremacy. It hasn't changed. And the places where non white people reside, I have concluded that that's the slave quarters of the plantation. There's a bigger, greater plantation in which the landlords I speak of, the powerful, the rich, they reside, they dwell, they have certain resources and this and that, and there's no crime and there's trees and all, and you can see the stars at night. And then you have where the rest of us live, you know, and those places, yes, are going to look like what Austin and Waukegan and North Chicago and the West Side and, South Side. And you mentioned Robin the Bird. Let's not forget we have a whole town that's been deserted by Illinois, Robbins, Illinois. You know, it looks like a whole shanty town. So I'm saying that to say whatever the powerful and the wealthy and the people who are in control, the dominant society, whatever they decide to put into these societies and enhance, that's what happens. And it's not to their benefit to make sure that these areas thrive like that. So it's going to take a mindset change for the people in these areas who are impacted by these problems to say, hey, we don't invest in, it's not all about capitalism, you know what I'm saying, and economic stuff, because you can't buy good character. We have to enforce that and make that a way of life among ourselves, starting with family, an extension of the family outside in the neighborhood, aka the village, and into the schools, and making sure people have the ability, to set forth and actually do good on that, you know, and have the mores and forays, meaning, the mindsets of the people replicated wherever they go, because that's what makes propaganda and marketing works. It's a replication and repetition of a process that makes people understand it's a standard.
Renitras, you thank you, bringing up excellent points. Can't undermine the character development and the community development, the family, that is foundational, and in no way, shape, or form should we undermine that with any policy. I brought up on the screen, Kevin Lewis says, I like the idea of having a blockchain based comms audit built by students as part of a senior project. Thank you for the feedback, Kevin. The To the Renisha's point, and Renisha's again said what Roman said. We don't know what that communication was. We have to look at, I think, both sides of it. Is what would cause? Why don't we have something for our youth to do? So that this isn't even an issue. And in the event that it does happen, why don't we know what the communication is on how the response is? So I definitely see two essential elements with this. We can dive in further to which side the equation. I mean, we can can we put that to rest? The idea of having this is a blockchain based, basically a communication audit that could be publicly audited because it's digitized. Is that something that we think is mainstream or helpful or effective? Should we put that kind of to rest, or is that let's do it and let's move on to the next piece? What are our thoughts on that before we?
I'll jump in and say, yeah, because people who are monitoring, you're paying people to monitor social media and for the police department and they know what's going on, then why they're not passing on? So it needs to be some type of accountability of how they're passing the communication to people on the ground. So I would agree to it, and I think it needs to be passed down, and I think some accountability should be addressed, because if they say it to the media, oh, this happened on social media, so forth and so on, then why you just didn't do anything about it? Who had access to this information, and why it wasn't passed down so the police officers could prepare for something like this? Now, to RP point, yeah, you're absolutely right. The police don't want anything to get out of hand, because guess what? The time that it happened and the time, you got to understand, several people got shot downtown. Several people got shot. Several teens got shot downtown. To relay the message, they said, come downtown and be prepared to fight. So they was already on some BS. They broke into the Art Institute, broke into several Walgreens, and whatever command that they had is not to escalate the problem, which I agree with. The policy is right now, how can we curve a problem like this? One is the audit that Jerome mentioned, that I agree with. The other is we should re-implement curfew. A lot of people would disagree with me on this, but the component of curfew and the component of holding parents responsible, because if you look at it, nobody under the age of 25 was down there creating mischief. These were all teens. So when you look at it, where are the parents? What the parents are doing? And it goes back to what Jerome Bester and RP was saying. Okay, what is there to do? That is the leadership of the so-called aldermen, the so-called representatives, the so-called the mayor, the leadership, because you're supposed to put programs in place when teens get restless. Remember, we used to have YMCAs, off the street club. We used to have those type of things. Now those things are slowly dying down, and you have other organizations that's putting money out of their own pocket, and they can only do so much. And instead of the representatives or the alderman said, I understand what you're doing, let me invest more so you can help more teens. Jobs is another situation that we should focus on for teens. Like, we can have cleanup projects. We can have these things in place right now, but it's up to the leadership to embrace these things, because right now it's a dog and pony show, and and I'm sorry, I know I'm on social media, it results to a pissing contest in some of these instances, because if I didn't think of it, then I don't want to endorse it. That's all I wanted to say.
You raised one other policy proposal, which is a curfew. Okay, I've a thought on that, but I want to hear from.
Well, curfew is already implemented. They just need to reinstitute it and implement it. Now,
what do you mean? Hold on. What do you mean by that? You're saying there's already a curfew for teens?
No. What I'm saying is, only thing they have to do is in the books. Only thing they have to do is just recreate the wheel.
You're saying they have the authority to issue a curfew right now?
Yes, they have the authority to issue a curfew right now. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Obviously, majority of these parents will say no.
But Roman, what I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Oh,
I'm
no,
trying to
no,
make a
no.
point.
I'm
Well, under
sorry.
what conditions can they issue a curfew?
What
Right now?
conditions?
Yes.
I would say, given what happened downtown, is a sneak preview of what's going to happen throughout the summer.
Can I ask real quick, what time was it that the so-called mob descended on downtown?
It started probably around, I think it started around 8 o'clock, I believe. I believe. Now, don't quote me on this. It started at 8 o'clock. It started getting out of hand at around 9ish. And then it really got out of hand at around 10. Now, again, it was a precursor of what happened on Friday at 31st Street Beach. So if you look at there's a history along the lines here that these teens are converging and using social media and say, be prepared to do this, be prepared to do that. And again, it's not properly communicated, which we discussed. However, when you know there's a trend going on, what you expect when it's hot outside, nothing to do, and you have organizations that's basically out of their pocket and they can only do a couple of teams at a time. The key question is why we're not holding the parents responsible, why we're not asking, the teens, what can we do to curb this problem from not happening again? Then I will also say, and again, a lot of people would be upset with me. We got to stop babying them. We got to stop babying them. And I'm not saying all. I'm just saying there's a whole bunch of rotten apples out there that wants to create mischief and mayhem. And I'm not saying all of them. Some of them just want to be spectators. But then again, we got to understand that it's wrong. It's wrong. Either way, it's wrong. And if we don't have the parents to hold them responsible, if we don't have the parents to like legislatively to say, I would prefer you to be the parent instead of a legislator becoming a parent, because only thing I'm going to do is make life harder for you and your child, because we're going to find you as the parent and we're going to hold you responsible for, number one, carjacking is responsible mainly because of teens. Teens are creating this issue. So legislatively, what you will have to do is say, hey, since they can't pay for the damages and they can't pay this, I'm going to hold the parents responsible for that.
Okay, so let's take a look at that. I actually like the idea of being crystal clear of, or being honest and upfront of saying there's a problem, we need to hold the parents accountable. We will, however, we're doing your job, and we're going to make the parents' life difficult if they don't shape up. Now, I don't have any specifics on how to do that, but I kind of like the sentiment of that.
Well, let me say this, and I'm sorry to interrupt, because I was part of the process of the last curfew, which was dismantled by Gary McCarthy. And they find it was a 3 strikes and you're out. And we had a curfew car in each and every district that also got dismantled by Gary McCarthy. I know this personally because I was there behind the scenes implementing these things. Right now, we don't have a curfew car. We need to have that back. Number 2, 3 strikes, and the parents will be fined $500 and community service for both of them. Then also, if this continues as a pattern, it will be a suspension of your license. And also, if it goes further, not only the suspension of the license, we're going to kind of like revoke your car for a couple of months or two. So a lot of people would say, why would you do that? Well, if you don't get a hold of your teen and you know your teen is out of hand, if you work 16, I understand 16, 20 hours a day, and I understand that. But if you don't have some kind of control over your teen, then get somebody else that will, or put them in a military school. What I'm saying in essence is this problem can't go around over and over and over again like a hamster wheel, because number one, Walgreens is losing money. And what they're going to tell the new mayor, which is Brandon Johnson, hey, if you don't get a hold of this problem, it's going to be a desert downtown. You're looking at NASCAR that committed to a 3-year contract, right? If this problem persists, guess what's going to happen? You don't think NASCAR, that's going to bring millions and millions of dollars into the into the city? Do they want this to happen on a continuous basis? The answer is no. So you have to result into drastic measures to say, hey, if you don't get control of your teams, if you don't get control of this situation, then damn it, I'm going to be the legislative parent here and force you to become a parent and force you to do something with your children. And it's said that you have to resort to these measures. I'm sorry to overtalk everyone, but I just wanted to make it clear that the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I was involved in the last implementation of the reinstitution of the curfew, which Gary McCarthy dismantled, and they did not reinstitute it back. When they was trying to, it was a fluff. It was
But
a fluff piece when they
so
had the
so here's
incident.
but here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's what makes third party different. And then I want to
Mhm.
hear a word from Baxter. I know he has probably some things to share. But I third party is about finding what is mainstream. And if it didn't hold up um, policy wise, then there it's possible that it wasn't mainstream. Now, things that happen politically aren't necessarily mainstream, so take that with a grain of salt. But when we're talking about addressing this issue, if we're going to be practical, third party has got to be mainstream. So the idea of a curfew, just to stick with what we can do policy wise, not undermining other responsibilities, we need to answer the question: is it mainstream? Um, and so, with that clarification, Baxter, I'd like to hear you if you have any thoughts on this issue.
Don't forget about me because he said a lot. I, I'm a mute. I'm a mute myself.
And
No,
Renitris after.
no, let her go ahead.
Go ahead, Renitris.
Okay. Try and make this as fast as I can. There's a quote I've learned was said by Dick Gregory, and he said, "When you put property rights over human rights, you tamper with nature because because property rights are controlled by man, and human rights are controlled by nature." I could be incorrect, but you sound more property right versus human right. And I say that in the sense of you mentioned NASCAR and Walgreens, and I understand again capitalism being a system or being a condition result of the system that I mentioned earlier. Um, it sounds like those things are more important to you than a holistic um, than the lives of young people. So, with that said, let me say this. You're very much entitled to your outlook. And I don't know everything that you've been through in Austin or just in life. But when I heard you refer to children, and I'm going to say children just because we're referring to those teenagers as teens and then they're not adults yet. When we refer to our children, especially as rotten eggs, I'm disturbed by that. I'm disturbed by that because I'm a teacher and I've seen firsthand children in a variety of conditions. And least we forget the the brain isn't finished developing until 25. So when you match immaturity, natural standard immaturity, with, again, programming from social media, from other people who have been programmed by social media. So, therefore, you have a process called mirroring. You have a bandwagon effect, so forth and so on. You have people, too, what you said as well. They don't want to necessarily cause harm, they just want something to do, and so they're spectating. I guarantee most of those people there aren't 25, probably do not have ideal situations going on for one reason or another, which brings me to the next point. So instead of promoting and repeatedly promoting what we do want, instead of focusing on what we do want, we're going to go into punitive action against parents whom we don't know if they got a pot to pee in or window to throw it out of, like my grandmother would say. We don't know if these kids are living with grands. We don't know if they're living on the street. We don't know if they're in foster care. And I'm not trying to speak in a way to demean. It's just that hurts. That hurts to hear us summarily throw away children and whatever caregivers they have. Because did we forget, we are we're captivated people in America here. We are captive people. We weren't, African people weren't invited at the table. Say, hey, how you want to set up America? You know what I'm saying? No, it was set up, and we had to just take whatever windfall of whatever was set up that wasn't to our behest or our on our behalf, mind you. We had to just roll with the punches. And then for the most part, since the 1950s and 60s, we've been fighting to get a little bit here and there and barely getting that, and barely getting those things upheld. So now we want to turn to punitive action for people who are most likely poor, on or below the poverty line. Revoke your car for people who you don't know if these people have multiple children they're caring for, someone's sick, and then to say, well, give them to somebody that can do it. Sir, are you electing yourself to be the first person in that line? That's kind of arrogant. I just hope that, I'm not calling you names. I think that we really have to be careful with our thought, speech, and action, because everything has a cause and effect, and we have to think multiple things through before we just come to one conclusion about punishment. Because businesses were disturbed, these businesses don't mind if they get robbed. They got insurance. They like that. That means now they get paid off inventory they didn't even have to sell half the time. But here we are upholding capitalism. That's more important to us, instead of saying, let's get together with these lawmakers, say we need green space opened up, give the kids job in the park, teach them how to be park rangers, have them where they do, pick up the trash, have the kids be meter maids, have the kids work in the library, have them work at the courthouse, have them work at the swimming pool, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, we're going to go to war. Well, we about to fine you and three strike you out like we playing baseball. I don't think that's the correct way to go about it. And no child is a rotten egg or rotten apple. I would hope that you find the time to think on that respectfully and get a little more empathy, especially about Black children.
I would like to respond after Baxter finish.
Going off
Oh
mute, guys.
no. Oh no, I'm not getting in the middle of that. You go ahead and respond, brother. No.
Okay, number one, RP, again, I I am being diplomatic here. And again, I just don't want you to think of me as a person that basically the three strikes and you're out, apples fall far from the tree or something like that. What I did mention, and again, later on my conversation, as I pointed out, that the lawmakers need to sit down with them to figure it out. But then again, we cannot have this happening. It was a repeat offense over and over throughout the pandemic. It was a repeat offense. What else? You're saying it's capitalism. But let's put it this way, stores are leaving, and they're leaving Black communities. Look at what's going on with Walmart. Look at what's going on, and they're blaming theft on us. And that's not the real reason they're leaving. So they're using every excuse. So what I'm saying to you is basically, suggestively, is that when you look at, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully, when you look at what's been going on, huh?
Don't.
Oh, don't?
This mega school, we all adults.
Yeah, I think that's what Jerome
We'll be
is.
respectful, but let's be honest.
That's part of the platform that Jerome is creating, where people say, and I think RP, I forgot her name, but I think that she said it just like she feels it. Now, I don't think that this would be a meaningful conversation if you don't.
Well, I just don't want what I'm saying gets misconstrued. You see what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is, what you said that I agree. When there's an action, it must be a reaction. And people are treading lightly towards this issue. And you got to understand that they broke up into the Art Institute. They broke up into this. Yes, they have insurance, but then again, there's this thing called claims that we should also look at a legislative point. You can't keep making claims, because guess what? They're going to hire your deductible, and as a store, and you keep on filing claims, then guess what? You're going to make a choice whether you're going to get out of that community or you're going to raise prices. So in a legislative point of view, you got to say, we cannot just have people run amok.
Okay.
We cannot have, wait, hold on. We cannot have our children run amok. And yes, we do need parents, and you don't know their situation. Yes, they belong to the state. Yes, they belong to this. Yes, I agree with you. However, what we disagree with is we cannot sit there and constantly baby them. Because guess what we're influenced by? We're influenced by the rap music that's out there that's being played by WGCI and Power 92. And guess what? I've been beating a damn drum saying it influenced mindsets, okay? Number two, the social media, like you said, you got social media, people want to be on World Star, and the list goes on, right? Fighting. The camera comes out when they see an incident, a fight. The list goes on. So if we're going to tackle a problem or an issue, let's get on the social media trend of World Star, WGCI, and Power 92, the music industry. Yes, and I agree with you, Lewis. It is a culture. It's a culture of problematic issues that's been facing us on a daily basis. And they think our culture, hip hop was not like this. Hip hop wasn't about the size of your penis. Hip hop wasn't the size of the butt. Hip hop is not like that. It was never designed like that. But then again, I'm looking at, and realistically, and I'm not saying you're not looking at this realistically. We just have two different points of view of how to handle a real tragic situation here. Because if you look at what's going on in the schools, you got rugged lawmakers out there in Tennessee, rugged lawmakers out there. We're fighting in Illinois as we speak to prevent teachers from having guns in the schools. Those are the type of things that I am worried about. But if we don't do something right now, drastic actions calls for desperate measures. And then again, it's like a catch-22. So yes, I agree with majority of what you have said, but it cannot continue like this. That's all I have to say to that.
Okay. Okay. So instead of looking at it, it's a matter of perspective. And I've studied enough to understand that since we're speaking of culture, and we have someone in the chat, maybe he could jump on and talk about a couple things, because one of the things I've come to understand studying the system of racism, white supremacy, is that we are just mirroring the culture of the dominant society. The marauders, the murderers, the thieves. Yes, I'm going to say it. Um, these are the people that promote exactly what happened downtown. And here we are, after almost 500 years of captivity, we're starting to do the things that the people that established this illegitimate nation, because of how it was conceived, okay, we're doing exactly what they do. So instead of looking at it as, oh my God, businesses are leaving and their deductibles are going up, maybe this is the chance to steer away from materialism. Maybe this is the chance to say, hey, we are going to consciously divorce ourselves from everything that was told to us to be productive and constructive, because we have the opposite. We are living the opposite, and we have evidence to prove that the opposite is true. This is not constructive. And to go back to simpler ways of life in which family and community, aka the village, is at the center. Okay, because going back to downtown, that ain't nothing but stores. Stores full of things that were made from resources that either were once stolen from nations or paid for with the minimum of cost, and items that were probably made under slave wages and conditions. But we want to defend that because some teenagers went down and wrecked shop. Nah, I say, let's say, okay, let's go back to nature and make sure, hey, when we pass these laws, well, let me say real quick about this. Walgreens and Art Institute and so forth. Well, then it's time for them. If capitalists are so concerned about business, then they need to make sure and have the legislators say, you want to do business, you employ this many teens, bar none. We ain't dealing with you if you don't. You pay this much in regard to the upkeep of this society. You have to volunteer. And we're not talking about your employees, because I used to work at Target long time ago for like a week. And they love to say, we donated this, then this, and this. They didn't actually donate. They get money from the customers when you shop, and they ask you if you want to donate, and then they take those donations and donate, and then they get to say they donated. You see how illegitimate that is? So no, make these people that sit in the offices come out and actually thrive and volunteer in the communities where they have these addresses. But again, go back to the fundamentals. We need to have more natural lives going on. We need to get away from the materialism, because the more materialistic a society gets, obviously the more destructive it gets.
So I do have some thoughts from the. It was a good conversation. It's I want to make sure that we're talking about the real root issue, um, and identifying the intersection between the real solution and policy, and that's only a component of it. However, I want to go with the spirit. I want to go with the flow and the spirit of the conversation, and not force anything at the same time. So I do have a thought, Baxter. You've been waiting patiently, so I'll go after you.
I'm not waiting. you know, I feel like, for one thing, you're doing the right thing by exploring mainstream views on public policy. And so it's important to reiterate that this is a conversation about public policy. Now, I think what RP is driving at are the discussions that are required to formulate public policy. But we don't draft public policy um, with cultural language. There's only one culture in America, you know. So, just thinking about Gary McCarthy, that Roman mentioned him several times. I ran Gary McCarthy's campaign for mayor last election.
You know what? I totally forgot about that. I'm sorry.
No, trust me, man. Me and Gary have had our differences, even as I was running his campaign for mayor. And I can tell you that Gary McCarthy has several innovative ideas about public safety that, believe it or not, are more progressive than anything I heard from Lori Lightfoot and others. I'm not promoting Gary McCarthy. The point that I'm making is when you start talking about policy, take for example this issue that you're talking about these children. I think I heard RP say that there are no bad apples. The fact of the matter is there are, and there's a good way to find them. There's a court process called extended jurisdiction, juvenile prosecution, where when a juvenile is found guilty, you give them 2 sentences. One as a kid, as a minor, and then one as an adult. And if for the next 10 years or so they behave themselves, then they get the juvenile sentence. If they don't behave themselves, when they do something really wrong, what kicks in is the adult sentence. But you give them at the same time. It's called an extended prosecution. It's juvenile extended prosecution. I'm bringing that up because the policy discussion is a difficult one, and it requires, for people who care about our people, to give it serious research, serious consideration, because we're losing our children right now, right? So if you're looking for a cultural revolution, I suspect that's terrific. But if we're talking about saving 12-year-olds, and I'm working with, well, not now, but last summer through ECCSC, I'm sure y'all know those guys, Ty Muhammad, working with a kid. When I met him, he was 11. I guess he's maybe 13 or so now. And he, quiet as kept, is the most prolific carjacker in Chicago. 12 years old. He was recruited, he was trained, he was groomed because he knows that he can't, because these predators know that he can't be prosecuted. Those problems have to be grappled with inside the forum of public policy. You don't abdicate your responsibility to compete there. You compete. We do everything that we have to do inside the community, in the block clubs, whatever. But when the time comes to put pen to paper and to legislate, to make laws, someone has to show up with the acumen to push the status quo so that our children are protected, so our communities are protected, so that single moms are protected, so that Black businesses are protected, so that vulnerable seniors and people with disabilities are protected. You have to think about this in its broadest context so that nobody's left behind. So, when you think about all of us talking about this public safety issue where, data needs to be reported, the most important issue that we're confronting in public safety right now is the RAP data. RAP, I forget, that's a rapid, somebody help me out, the call system for when you're looking for urgent calls. The RAP
Rapid
data
response?
No, it's anyway, but that's the basically 911 call.
Okay.
And so for decades, we haven't been able to get the rap data. We haven't been able to get the data demonstrating who gets the call, who's supporting the primary police officer who's responding to the emergency, how long it took for law enforcement to show up, and what happened when they got there. And there are a bunch of other factors. Kwame Raoul wrote a brief saying that there's no reason whatsoever why you should be able to hold on to rap data. You understand? So what's required is, you'll be able to make a better public policy. You'll be able to design a more effective public policy solution if you had your hands on that rap data. You would you would be in a position to know, are our children, or are these, full blown seasoned criminals who are causing these problems, because all of that is in the rap data. I'm only bringing that up, to have a public policy discussion. You certainly don't want to focus on details. What you want to do is have a framework conversation. But I don't know if anybody has appetite for that. The only point that I'm making is, having run Bobby Rush's campaign for Congress, Gary McCarthy's campaign for mayor. I don't know who are some of the others. John Edwards for president. You start to look at all of these when you sort of get beyond the ideological divides, right? And you think pragmatically about how people make laws in this country. You start to realize, A, you need a champion. B, you need a coalition. C, you need data. D, you need to ground truth the data. Take that data, put it in the community, rigor it, see if it makes sense, see if it's real. Because sometimes big data really doesn't resonate in local communities. You got to get down into the nitty gritty of this thing and take some of the things that RP is saying and animate it, activate it inside City Hall, the General Assembly, the House of Representatives, the White House, NATO. Yeah, you gotta come. You gotta arrive in those spaces with something to offer. Yeah.
Can I say something real quick to that, Jerome? Because unfortunately, I have to jump off
Go
in a
ahead.
second. I definitely want to add this real quick, since it's probably consider this my sign out. You know, I'm attempting, and it sounds like we're all attempting to produce justice. My definition of that I got from Neely Fuller Jr. is justice is a system in which no one is mistreated, and those who need help get the most constructive help. The reason I said that, I'm a double down, triple down, family, quadruple down on no, no child is a bad apple, bad seed, rotten, nothing. The young man you spoke of, 12 years old, the most sophisticated carjacker that you know. Okay, flip it. If he were in ideal situations, in an ideal setup with an ideal family, or if it's his or not, just in a family that is considered stable, with stable housing, he's having access to foods that will help him develop in productive ways, not fast food and artificial stuff. He's getting the proper sunlight, nutrition, etc. And he's being exposed to the stuff Jerome knows, or he's being exposed to mechanics through STEM. Imagine him, instead of being the most sophisticated carjacker, he's the most sophisticated engineer. But because that's not his scenario, now all of a sudden he gets to be mentioned as the most sophisticated carjacker. We have to start flipping this stuff and start looking at the converse. If this is true, then what is the opposing thing of this? Because that is also going to be true as well. It may not be what's happening, but what I'm trying to advocate to you all to say is this: we have to, it's going to start with not disparaging the people we live among and instead say, hey, what do we actually want? Instead of having that young man in the penal system of the United States of America, take him out of that and introduce him to some academics and some engineering and things where he can start to hone that craft into something constructive and useful. So that way he isn't a criminal in adulthood and isn't criminalized in his childhood. He's only doing what he has access to. Nobody is born on planet Earth and comes out the womb saying, I want to be a loser. I want to be a psychopath. I want to be a sociopath. I want to be a robber. That's not
Don't be
true,
so sure. Don't be so
sir.
sure.
Okay.
You know,
If
I
you
will
if
say,
you
I
think
will.
that if you think that, then I'm gonna I'm a I hope you're being facetious because that's not a good thing to even joke about. We're talking about lives
I'm not
here.
joking. I'm not being facetious. I'm being provocative. But
Okay.
I will say this. I will say this. That if
Hmm.
we are not willing to separate some people away from the Commonwealth, then we're not talking about public policy.
So you want to separate a child that sounds like he needs all the protection and love he can get. You want to
Oh,
separate him?
by the way, that's not the kid that I was talking about as a bad apple. He's doing great right now.
Okay, but
But
I'm just saying, so let's say he wasn't doing great. You would want to separate him because it sounds like instead of going away from society and having the nurturing he needs, instead of putting him out where he's isolated, which is definitely going to make him worse, it
yeah,
sounds
but
like he needs more interaction.
it,
All these kids do,
it only sounds that way because we haven't been able to talk about it in the context of policy.
right?
So that's why it sounds that way to you because you having conversations about something else, you know.
No, I'm
But
talking about policy. We can't see this is the
no,
thing
no,
about
but
black.
okay, but here's the thing though. You know, I'll just say this: if we talk about it in context of policy, right? Policy is a framework for it is an exclusionary framework, right? And when we talk about the earned income tax credit, not everybody's eligible for that. When we talk about public safety, we're not everybody is going. So there's always a separation of persons so that we can identify who needs what. And
Who
Harold Laswell, my favorite political scientist, he once defined political science as the science of who gets what, when, and how. And that's essentially what policy is all about. It is about dividing people into certain areas. Now, what I want to say
wait,
to
wait, real
you,
quick.
but,
I
I'm
get
gonna
what
say
you're
this, and
saying,
I'm
but
gonna say
let me
this.
respond to
I'm
that
gonna say
real
this, and I'm
quick.
gonna be done. I'll let you say what you want.
Okay.
What I would say to you, RP, is this: if we could think about, if we could think beyond equality and beyond justice, and we get to true fairness, because I heard you say that we're all pressing towards justice. I've never been into that, but what I would really
Mm.
like is like true fairness, and
What
not.
does fair mean?
Well, we can discuss that, but if I were to say the goal of public policy is to give everybody what they need so that they can support the Commonwealth, so that everybody can make a contribution, so that we're all doing well. Not everybody's going to be a lawyer or a doctor. Some of us are going to be, plumbers and whatever. But it's about making sure that whatever dream or aspiration, skill set, or drive that you have, it has its lane to thrive. And if we think about everybody being in the same lane, then that sounds like a great society to me, but that is not the one we live in, and that is certainly not the conversation of public policy in this country.
See, everything is still
You have the
in
floor.
everything is still in the context of white supremacy. I think that's where we messing up. Everything, yeah. So maybe we need to have the discussion about that. Maybe our policy, the people on here, for instance, we need to uh, delve more into divorcing that because it's not a constructive system. This system does exactly what it enforces, exactly what it wants to happen. It does not cultivate people's lives for the most part, so where they can, pursue happiness and whatever the preamble said and what you just said. That's not true. Based on evidence, this society at large is about just what you saw downtown, what you see when you go in neighborhoods that you consider disturbed. That's what it's into. And there's no ambiguity for that. Otherwise, we would have what? The opposite, the flip, right? And it was something else you said as far as policy, or if okay, it sounds like the policy that I'm discussing is different than the policy you all want to discuss. The policy you all are trying to discuss is, again, putting landlords and corporations over people.
I haven't heard you
And
put
that's
up any
definitely,
policy proposal yet.
oh, that
I heard
well,
you. I heard you
just well,
identify
so everything
cultural
has
norms.
so in the words of Dr. Marimba, I invite you to look her up. Everything has an
I
Asili.
know who she is.
Everything has an Asili. So if the Asili is going to be based in something that was derived and birthed from chaos, we can't. Yeah, there ain't no proceeding from that. If you're not here for justice, then what are I don't know what fairness is, because fairness has so many racist implications and connotations. I don't play with fairness at all. I know justice though, and justice is
Justice has
what I said.
justice has justice has implications for law enforcement. I'm using my word very very carefully.
Criminal justice does, not justice.
I'm just
So
telling
I
you.
just want to let you know again.
When we
So
talk
that's
about
a
when you
system
talk
of
about
this.
a policy context, when you start talking about justice, you invite a conversation about law enforcement. I'm trying to help you out, RP.
Restate the policy. How do you want me to refer to you? You want me to refer to you as RP, or because I want to be consistent. I don't want to be respectful. RP, tell. Hang on.
Her headphone died.
Uh-oh.
She's muted.
That. Okay. Well, perhaps she'll post in the chat, but she did say that she was about ready to move on. But please post in the chat if unless you need to get going. Roman, I know you were about to say. What I wanted to say is, if there's a question about where we stand on policy, let's restate what our policy proposal is. This started out with a very specific situation, and I'll admit, it's bigger than I think I realized. Full disclosure, I heard about this in passing earlier today. I didn't actually read or look up the news story. So,
It's very. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I don't want to, rehash what has already been said, but the need. I know enough that the need for a meaningful response is needed. But I want to challenge us to say, hey, this is what I propose as policy. Let's keep coming back to that. We may disagree, but let's keep coming back to that. And then we have to ask the mega school third party question, is that whether your policy proposal is right or the best or not, is it mainstream? Because for the purposes of what third party brings to the table, we have to only work with what's mainstream. And frankly, you can have the right and best policy, and third party can't do it for you because we only work with what's mainstream. And so you can take it to another party. And so for all the other things where we do agree, third party, if no one else can get that done, and then through another party, you can take, your specific policy and push it through that way. So it's a collaborative effort between third party and other parties or independents. That just to reiterate the function. So let's keep coming back to this is the policy I propose, and I believe it's mainstream because of this or that. This is unique to third party, so this is our challenge. So Roman, you were saying.
Okay, I just want to reiterate because I'm looking at the dynamics and it's 3 males, 1 female. And I don't want RP to think that we're beating her up or kind of like poo-pooing what she's saying, and that's not what we're actually saying to her. I think what we're trying to say is, yes, your idea is good. Your idea of compassion is good. Your idea of education is good. Your idea for having training in trade is good. However, there's the however component. The however component is that every time we had trade, they cut it. Every time we have something that's going good for us, they say it's not in the cards or in the budget, right? So I think RP is back, so I'll let her respond, and then I'll come back where I left off.
Okay. RP, you go ahead. We can't hear you at the moment. I don't know if can't hear you. I'll tell you what, RP, just start talking. Just interrupt so that we know that your headphones are working again. Okay. So Roman, go ahead and finish what you were saying. RP, just interrupt so that we know that we can hear you. Go ahead, Roman.
So what I'm saying is the trade situation that we have in schools and stuff is dismal. It's really no more. And we're trying to reincorporate trade, schooling, whatever they wanted to become. But we have let decades lapse. And now they don't want to become the plumber or the electrician. They want to become a rapper. They want to become this so-called, a video, what? These are the things that they'll tell you themselves, that's what they want to be. Now, we have to have reformative legislation to help them. Like what RP said, yes, we need to have early teen jobs. Yes, we do need that. Like cleaning up the parks, vacant lots, the list goes on and on. That has happened. But again, these organizations can do so much. Now, my policy recommendation is right now, we're in a tough situation. And I think that if we should consider having a curfew measure reinstituted with new restrictions and fines and stuff like that, to, again, we don't want to be your parent, but a lot of things are happening that force lawmakers to become your parent. And you don't want that. You don't want the police to become your parent. But a lot of situations are going out there. Are we living in a capitalist society? Unfortunately, yeah, we are. The problem is right now that the stores like Walgreens have nothing to, didn't do anything to the kids, to the children, but they chose to loot. It's only so much that we can do. And if we don't get a hold of this situation, again, we're a stone throw away of becoming Detroit. You look at the latest numbers. If we don't get a hold of this, we will become another Detroit.
Okay.
So
Can
the
you hear me?
policy, go ahead, RP. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead and say what you were going to say. And go ahead.
So Roman's policy proposal again restated curfew. Okay, that's what's on the table. Roman, in your personal opinion, do you think that's mainstream? Again, in heart of hearts, behind closed doors, off the record, do you think 80% plus of Chicagoans would support a curfew? Just your
Yes.
opinion. Okay. Okay. RP.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm glad you said that because I actually did mention some things, a few things that would be considered policy. I said it should be standards that businesses these have a prerequisite of employing however many teams. There should be so many. I'm going to add journeyman fellows, not apprenticeships for any manufacturing business. And also a policy that could be enforced is making sure every convenience store, grocery store, whatever, has a section dedicated to nutrition facts and dedicated to ingredients, so that way people also understand what's in this food that could be making their children go absolutely crazy as well, because a lot of stuff that people are eating is making their minds defunct. I'm going to end for sure, and I apologize for my technical errors. You know, I can say this unabashed. I love my people to the point that I will defend my people because we've been set up. And with that said, since you mentioned hip hop, I added a link to the Clear the Airwaves project. Brother Kwabena is in the city of Chicago. If that's something you're adamant about, he has protested and petitioned the FCC to uphold their own standards of no profanity before the time of 10 p.m., 2200 hours. So please hit him up. In conjunction to Mega School, I've also told Jerome about the Venus Project. It's a project that, you know, I believe is similar to what Jerome is doing, things that are more equivalent to maintaining nature and bringing in automation and systems that will allow people to thrive without having to compete and without having them subjected to danger unnecessarily. That's more cohesive with the planet we live on, just like what, you know, Jerome is proposing. So I'm just throwing another resource out there and just wanted to say, you know, thank you for having me. Produce Justice, producejustice.com is also another thing I will refer you all to. It's taught me a lot, and I have a much constructive existence because of it. And thank you.
Thank you, RP. Thank you for joining us. So policy proposals, RP mentioned again. I mean, I get them all, but the requiring the hiring of the teenagers in those businesses, well, in the community in general, as well as having a certain quality standard for what's actually being sold there, so that they can be proud to work in these local businesses. At least those two as policy proposal. Baxter, can you reiterate, repeat your policy proposal in regards to the issues raised?
And you know, when it comes to public safety, I probably have about 20 policy proposals that, you know, over the years I've had to craft for various reasons. But the consent decree, if we're talking about a framework for social change, I believe in working to dismantle the structures that hold inequity in place first. So we work at the systemic structural level to undermine all of the systems, programs, and pillars that hold the conditions where crime and hopelessness, poverty, and apathy thrive. There's a condition that's been created. So if you want to get to the root cause, you know, you have to get in there. So I'd like to get in there and see what these people are doing. You know, let me see what's happening here. And if you take the time to go to the consent decree dashboard, you'll see that they have colors: green, yellow, red, or whatever. Green so there are about 300 points. You got to remember that this Chicago Police Department is under a consent decree. Now, they are not under a federal consent decree. They are under a state consent decree that was initiated by Attorney General Lisa Madigan, but they are not complying with the decree. Now, inside that consent decree are mechanisms for people to go to jail. The consent decree started with the Laquan McDonald shooting. It was more than people could take. Of course, I understand that issue very well, having been linked to Gary McCarthy. But so now you have an independent monitor, and they produce an IMR, an independent monitor report that shows you to what degree. They come out twice a year. One is coming out soon, if it hasn't come out already, in the spring and in the fall. They show you to what degree the Chicago Police Department is complying with the consent decree. What you'll find is there are about 300 points that have been mandated for these people to do in order to reform the Chicago Police Department. Chicago Police Department is the worst, man. It's the worst. So if you look on that dashboard, you see a bunch of red. And that red is there because they have not, and they are not going to comply with those points. They're just not going to. You need to meet a young man by the name of Bob Boyk. He was the executive director of the organization that was designed to push compliance with the consent decree. He was fired by the superintendent and by Mayor Lori Lightfoot because he was asking for resources that would enable him to make structural change. He don't mind telling his story. It's a white guy. Go talk to him. Bring him on your show. He'll tell you that consent decree does not go nowhere. Now, before you create public policies to engender fairness and to hold bad cops accountable and just to make us all safer, I ain't in the blaming game. I want to be safe, and I want my people to be safe. Why don't we just look at that consent decree? It's already on the books. Enforce the consent decree. After 4 years, 5 years, is it 5 years, 6 years, the consent decree remains in non-compliance, somebody should go to jail. I mean, and that's not me saying, hey, look, we need to put people to. No, that is a mechanism embedded in the law of the consent decree. What I want to say about justice is justice, you can't hide from it. It is embedded in all of the policies and legislation that we pass in this country, in this city, in this state. What most people don't understand is the civil rights movement was about making good on the promise for justice. It's about cashing the check, the promissory note. You promised that all men were created equal. You promised that everybody was equal under the law. You promised that you could speak your mind without political repercussions. These are in the Bill of Rights. You don't need to create another Bill of Rights. What you need to do is read the Bill of Rights and hold people accountable for what is written in the Constitution that's been ratified by the states of, by the 50 states of the United States of America. So you understand what I mean? So a policy conversation. So the framework that I've created for the Austin community, I identified, there are 5 programs for whatever reason that have funding, but they don't apply to Austin. Garfield Park, Lawndale, Humboldt Park, but they don't apply to Austin. For us, for any new money, why don't you just give us the money that you're giving to the other people? So I have at least 5 of those. And then there are existing structures that can be implemented with the help of the city of Chicago. It's the law. A zoning advisory board, so that people can't come into your community and put up a McDonald's wherever they want. A home equity assurance program, so that if your community is changing, the value of people's homes will be protected. Even when gentrification happens, or when you have an influx of low-income people. Conservation councils. These are councils that were created back in 1953, still on the books. It helps tax incremental financing districts pursue their redevelopment plan. So whatever reason that TIF district was created, you can create a council to hold people accountable for actually implementing the redevelopment plan. When you talk about Community Reinvestment Act back in the 1970s, we still can't get community reinvestment. A bank is obligated to invest back into the community where they do business. You don't just take the deposits and then don't give loans to the local businesses. You can create a community reinvestment council. This is not, before you embark on a culture war, hold these people accountable for their reneging on the promise. The promise is in black and white. It's in home equity assurance programs were developed for white people who wanted to protect the value of their homes in the event of black migration incursions into their community. They were afraid that when black people moved in, they wouldn't be able to sell their homes. So they had these home equity insurance programs were created to prevent white flight. So we'll protect the value of your home. Just stay, don't leave. How cool is it that we create a home equity insurance program for black homes? The value of their homes are impacted when you build public housing or affordable, whatever. Even though that may not be the case, the data shows that actually, when the communities are integrated, when you have a diverse community, the value of a home goes up. But the fact of the matter is, give it your best for the people who need it the most. And I consider it dialing in, giving up, simple approach when people revert back to the culture conversation, as opposed to fighting in the space where we're being harmed the most.
I want to jump in right quick. You mentioned what it was called again, the home insurance what?
Home equity assurance programs. There's 4 in the city right now.
Okay. Now, this is something that I think that the Austin community really needs at this point.
It's already on its way, Roman. I need your support for it too, by the way, brother.
You got it. Just let's set up a meeting. And I'm sorry to do this on your platform.
No. Hey, this is what we're here for.
Let's set up a meeting ASAP, because right now I think because I'm a homeowner myself, and these prices is going up astronomically, and I'm not blaming this on him, but since Brandon has won mayor, people are gobbling up property, and they're charging like $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to $600,000 for a home in an Austin community, and it's not appraised by that, and people are accepting that amount. So we need to move this as quickly as possible and set up a meeting, and I will probably drive this home, and because I think it's more important. It perked up my ears like a dog when you said that, because this is something that's needed in the Austin community ASAP. And it shouldn't be like it's coming to a theater near you. This should be already happening. And we just don't want to talk about it. We need to be about it and hold these legislators accountable for something like this, saying, hey, this is already on the books. It should be implemented ASAP, like right now. And I'm willing to put pen to pad on this situation. And I'm fired up about it, because you know what? I have seen many people lose their homes in the Austin community because they are either taxed out because of the over appraise of their homes, and they have been taxed to the point that that they can't afford to pay the taxes no more. And then you got the appraiser, the Cook County assessor's office, saying, oops, our bad, we just over assess your property. And people don't realize that every time the Cook County assessor comes out with a delay of their taxes, it's an assessment. It goes off an assessment. So if your assessment is high last year, what is going to be this year? It's going to be high again. So in the Black community, we need to kind of like hold these people accountable. And these are our legislators, right? Local and state. We need to hold them accountable and say, hey, these are on the books and we're going to enforce it, and we're going to hold committees, set up committees, and drive this home until we get what we want.
Hey guys, I gotta get going, but I will say this. I appreciate Roman. We on that ASAP. Let's do it this week, by the way. And let's involve Jerome, because
Absolutely.
he's actually has connected this conversation. And I always think that people who do that, they're important throughout the process. I will say that what Jerome is driving at, this mainstream public policy making apparatus, that approach, that's the right way to do it. It can be the right way to do it. I think it is a good way to think about it. But I think in that vein, you'll find that Black, white, Latino, and everybody else, because I keep hearing us talking about Black this and Black that race. I think what Jerome is driving at is third parties. I ran for lieutenant governor, right, as an independent. Somebody gave me $1 million to run for governor. I had television commercials and billboards and everything, right? So I was running for lieutenant governor with my running mate, who was a millionaire. Okay, so I said, okay, so let's see to what degree there's an appetite for the type of public policies that, I didn't think we had a chance to win. But Jerome, you understand what I'm saying? Let's see what people think about these policy proposals that have been, thrown out there. And I think what you'll find is they divide people along race and gender and income and all that sort of business. I mean, come on, let's be real about it. What you're saying is exactly right, Roman. You know what I'm saying? But for the purposes of what Jerome is driving at, the truth is, I think he was testing you. Like, do you really feel like that's a mainstream idea? And I'll say two things about that. Having written public opinion polls, it can be difficult to find out what's mainstream and what's not. People will lie to you. It's not easy. If you say, do you support, fairness and justice? Oh yeah, sure. Do you support, a public education funding scheme that is not based on property taxes, so that everywhere you go, everybody gets the same kind of, oh, no. I'm not going to pay my property taxes for those people on the west side of Chicago. You know what I mean? No. So you find out what they really believe. You understand what I mean? But the point that the central thing that I want to say before I go is, we don't have to divide until we have to. A lot of things that we have both been saying, believe it or not, I tell people all the time, how can you call these people who are attacking Obama racist when they're the ones who elected him? It's impossible to elect a Black president, for Black Americans to elect a Black president. Impossible. I run 2 Democratic primary elections. Impossible. The way the calendar is set up, the way the primary system is set up, the way the electoral college is set up. Your vote is almost nil when it comes to electing the Black president. White people elected Barack Obama. Okay. Now I wanted to put that data in front of anybody who wants to contest that. And that's the same thing with Brandon Johnson. White people elected Brandon Johnson. Okay. White progressives elected Brandon Johnson. I know a lot of Black people voted for him and all this sort of business, but if you look at the numbers, you'll see. That's how I remember telling Chicago Crane, he's gonna win, because in the field of 6 Black elected officials, Black candidates, he didn't win any Black ward. He's going to win every Black ward when he runs against Paul Vallis. All I'm saying is a mainstream approach is the right way to start, and we don't part ways until we have to. We put everybody in a position to put their cards on the table. Okay, we all say that we want better public safety. We all say that we want more access to home ownership and whatever. You can test that by introducing policies that redistribute those resources and opportunities. Then we see how people respond. So, all right, that's all I have to say, brother. I love you, Jerome. I really appreciate you, Roman. You guys.
I'm going to say final words, and we'll all leave if that's okay. Just give me.
And RP, if she's listening, sister, we love you. You know, there's no, we with you.
Yeah, and just final words. Thank you everybody, RP, Roman, Baxter for joining. This we're in uncharted territory. You know, we're doing something that hasn't been done before, to the best of my knowledge. And like the way Baxter put it, you said we don't part until we have to. And so that is very much a good summary of what a third party is seeking to do. I have a lot of homework to do on my end, and I think and any viewers as well. And we're just gonna keep working this thing out. Anybody who's watching this, you are welcome to be a guest. We're looking to join this wonderful group of people, and to figure this thing out, and to discover what is mainstream. So with that, thank you for all of our viewers and all of those who put comments, and again to our guests. And we look forward to the next time, to the mock candidate policy show by third party. Until next time, you guys stick around just to do a last final goodbye, but that'll end our show for the week. Take care.